It's the weekly here on the Blue Room on a unusual Thursday night, but because Everton are playing on a ridiculous 8 o'clock on a Saturday night against Wolves away, not sure why they keep on coming up with these ridiculous kick-off times, but I've got Adam Sutton, who I haven't seen for ages, buzzing to be talking with him about Everton, and because we're back playing now after a bit of a break to what happened at Brentford, where Everton came away with a decent result again. Unbeaten run continued under David Moyes. And we'll have Pete McFarlane joining us soon as really when he can get all the connections sorted on his line. First thing I want to ask you, how are you, first of all, mate?
I'm good. We just said before we click record then, didn't we? It's nice to not be the talking point, really, isn't it? As a club at the moment, really. I know there's a number of things going on, well, I'd say behind the scenes, but definitely on set, so to speak, in terms of stadiums and new appointments at the top of the the org chart. But yeah, from a footballing point of view, 90 minutes, it's not bad, is it, at the moment, really? Sat there, scoring a few goals, winning a few games, and getting fans off the seats, really, which is nice. So yeah, I think Everton being not terrible goes a long way to me feeling relatively decent.
Yeah. I mean, because I haven't spoken to you for that long, how did you feel about when Moyes first came in? Because with myself, I mean, I'd go as far as saying I was probably in the minority of saying that he was probably the best choice for us to go and get. You get a lot of fans sort of thinking outside the box and thinking about like fans who've done managers who've done well abroad and various aspects of what you want to get from a new manager. But I thought he was a safe pair of hands. What we've seen since then, though, he's gone past that. He's gone beyond those expectations, in my opinion. What did you think?
Yeah, I was probably one of the people you just mentioned there. Really, we want a unknown guy from South America who's won loads of games in his league, and then he comes over to the Premier League and plays this amazing brand of football, and we go and win the lot, really. But I think after you take a breather, actually, and realise where we are as a club, where we almost need to be within the next couple of years, I don't think another appointment like that, which can go so well, but as with Everton, it usually doesn't. So since he's come in, it's mad, because the first rumours I heard of Moyes coming back, I was really underwhelmed and thought, I get it, I definitely get it, but is it going to be something that really excites us in this last period at Goodison Park and obviously into the new stadium? But as you've just said there, Dave, it's been well and beyond what I thought it was going to be in terms of expectations and delivery, really. And I feel like and I've listened to a number of podcasts recently with yourself and Matt and Paddy, etc., and he has softened, I think, in terms of how he's come across. And he's actually a brilliant blend of that almost hard-faced Scotsman who did so well with Everton, who, of course, got a move to one of the biggest clubs in the world. You don't get that by just being any old gaffer, really, do you? To now almost the experience he's had, the players he's dealt with, the clubs he's been to, and almost coming home, really. And that's a brilliant blend, isn't it, at the moment, that he wants to be here, he's glad to be here, but he also knows that there's a task at hand to almost save this club, the club that he loves. So we're in a really good moment, aren't we, at this point in time, and long may it continue. I think you're on mute, Dave.
I stopped that because of our dogs kicking off the three little Dachshunds who shout like they're Rottweilers or something. Yeah, with Moyes coming in, I think it's interesting what you said there, because when he came back, I think what's front and centre in your mind there, you do look at something like that with the blinkers on. I think when you can see a manager coming back and you knew what he was like with us, at the time, it was probably our best 2 or 3 seasons we've seen from Everton, probably in most of our lifetime, myself and you, Adam, in how Everton were playing. Everton really good to watch that last couple of seasons, probably why Man United and Alex Ferguson decided to go for him. And since then, it all sort of became a train wreck, didn't it? In his managerial career, you think of Sociedad and Sunderland, absolute nightmare for him. The one place where it did work, ironically, was West Ham, but for one season, because he'd been sacked and gone back there. I think it's really interesting that it's easy to read between the lines on Moyes and his managerial career, but what's been completely different from my point of view with him since he's come back is how he's structured Everton, how he's played with Everton, how it feels, and you mentioned there about speaking to him again and all that, is like a completely different human being, but also he's a completely different football manager in my opinion. He gets the same tag as dinosaur and all that sort of thing, and even people say that about Mourinho, don't they? When you think back to the mid noughties, where that's when Chelsea really kicked on and won all sorts. That's when Everton was sort of best of the rest tag and all this. And then since he left, he'd sort of been thrown to one side in terms of a reputation as a really good manager. We've gone and got him back. I don't think the owners or whoever it was that made that final decision that he was coming back would have hoped, well, he would have hoped, but wouldn't have expected the situation to become as good as it has with him. Did that surprise you as much as when he came in, how he had Everton structured, how he had Everton playing, how he had the system we've got? Also, how quickly he was able to get this drilled into this team that had been all over the place under Sean Dyche.
Well, I think there was a number of quick wins, wasn't there? In terms of, you can't get much more negative than Sean Dyche in those last 5-10 games, so to speak. Can you really? In a way of that fans were going to the game because, well, they've bought a season ticket and they've got a ticket for that given game, haven't they? Really, and that's never a good place to be as a football fan. And I've done that many a time since David Moyes left. Actually, it's almost like getting up, getting out, getting the train or driving down to the ground, and you sit there for 90 minutes and then you go home. But these from obviously Villa onwards, and even from the Villa game when he first came in, something fresh is always going to be something better anyway. But then actually, as I said before, the quick wins that he's got really about bringing a couple of players in who were on the peripherals, or with the likes of Jake O'Brien being the example, putting him in the team and a couple of the fans get a lift, or playing somebody who's maybe in and out of form, giving them a bit of life, the likes of Iliman Ndiaye, the likes of Vitaly Mykolenko, some of these players who on Mykolenko's hand is probably shot of confidence. Granted, he doesn't speak the best English, but it doesn't take, I don't know, a translator to understand that there's a lot of fans who are on his back or not rating him. The likes of Beto's come in and he's got, well, said it himself, hasn't he really? He's been given so much confidence by David Moyes. And that's something that's not necessarily tactical, that is it? It's more of playing on the emotions of these players and playing on the emotions of these fans. And like it or not, we can have a foreign manager come in and play this fantastic tiki-taka football and high press, but a lot of fans just want to see good results and good, honest football. And I think that's what David Moyes has built his career on, actually. Winning games, if you can win it 4-0, great. But if you win it 1-0, just as great, really, because 3 points is 3 points to Everton at this moment in time, isn't it? So, well, I think in short, I've nowhere near expected it to be like this. But the more you see this team start to gel, and actually the more you see this manager, team and set of fans start to gel, you can really feel the magic of the club again, can't you, really? And it doesn't take much of a spark for us as fans to get behind those players. And I look around at some of those players, your Abdullah Doucoure, Idrissa Gueye, James Tarkowski, they feed off energy. They feed off positive energy as well, actually. And there's been a lot of positive energy around the club. And if you're going into work and someone's saying, you're the bollocks, mate, you're absolutely flying here, everyone's loving you, go on, go get yourself a goal, go and do this, doing that, you're going to go, am I? Yeah, I am, actually. And the vibe I got off Sean Dyche towards the end of his tenure, which was, to be honest, ended with him telling us what we all thought. He probably turned around to those players and said, you can't do this, you can't do that. I don't believe that you can go and attack and win games, so we're not even going to try. And these players, they're not terrible players, but you're going to make them look terrible when you're telling them they can't do what they feel like they can. And I think David Moyes has done two really good things. He's done that man management, and he's also done the connection with the fans and the players, and that's massive.
I think that's, but you know what, I've never thought of things that way, like you've just explained there, because it's quite subtle to us to look on, but like you've mentioned there, if you compare that to your normal everyday life, when we're all at work, we all have to work for a living. If somebody says to you that you're not good enough, or if they don't even say anything at all, and I'm like that, really, I have this feeling when you don't feel, what's it called, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I've had that many times working at the BBC. I've been at the BBC for 6 years now, and then I was at Radio City for decades before it. And I've always had that feeling that's been niggling in the back of my mind every time. And sometimes it'd get really heavy on me. Sometimes, but I'd always have it in the atmosphere of people in and around me and not thinking I was good enough for stuff. But what you've just said there is spot on. I think you've probably got a few players who've been so down mentally, given what happened with Dice. You mentioned Mikalenko's the first one that comes to mind for me, because he was he player of the season this season before last?
Mm.
And then he's just completely, just his head's on the floor and all over the place. And then you see Moyes come in and it's done a complete 180. And that's no fluke. That's not by chance. He's gone in and done that sort of thing. And going back to his years when he was at Everton, he was a difficult man to speak to. And that's why I'd love to sit and talk to him for a length of time since I've seen him, since he's been back, about how that's changed for him throughout his career. Because obviously he's getting on as a manager, but I do wonder, those sort of sliding door moments that he might well have had, thinking that, do you know what, if it had gone to Man United 10 years after it did, this would be completely different, because of how different he's got Everton, the structure he makes. But going back to the point you've made there, that is like, it's hard to treat footballers these days, millionaires, all that sort of thing, playing in grounds, don't have to speak if they don't want to, all that sort of thing. We only get a tiny glimpse of what they're like as human beings. But you're absolutely right when you relate that to what we have in our lives, me, you, people who just generally go to work and whatnot. If you're getting encouraged by your manager, by people around you, somebody telling you you've done a good job, how much better that makes you feel, how much better that makes you perform, because you're like, I want to keep these standards. And that's
For me, sorry, Dave. For me, I can only relate it to. Listen, I play a very low level of football, but I can only relate it to the lads I play football with now. And listen, I'm 31 years of age. I've played football for a long time, really. And I'll tell you the massive difference that I've seen, and it's glaringly obvious actually across the board, whether you're playing in the West Lancs counties or you're playing in the Champions League. It's that there's 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old lads coming into our changing rooms now. And our gaffer would give us, in years gone by, an absolute rocket at half-time. And he'd say, you've done this, you've done that, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. And for me, I love gritting my teeth a little bit and going, he's acting like this and he's telling me this, I'm going to go and show him. But you can't do that anymore. It doesn't fly anymore, unfortunately, for two reasons, Dave. One that you've just mentioned, the fact that these lads are multimillionaires. The script has totally flipped in terms of who's in charge, by the way. Contracts, money, social media, they can portray themselves how they want to portray themselves, really. And if you're not playing them, then you've probably got someone upstairs saying, listen, he's on 120 grand a week there. You better get him inside. And they're in control then. But the other side of it is that they need that pickup. You can't be going shouting and screaming at 17, 18. Do you think Vitaly Mikalenko or Jesper Lindstrom are going to react to some manager coming in and saying, you've been this and you've been that and you've not been good enough? They need guidance, so to speak. Of course, you need to give them the feeling that they're good enough. If they haven't been, then there's a way of structuring it, so to speak. And yeah, I just think it comes down to the bottom line of they've been given a lease of life. The shackles are being lifted slightly. And I actually think from David Moyes' point of view, he's just happy to be here. And that's radiating around the club, isn't it?
Yeah, that's spot on. I mean, Peter Mack's going to join us now. But I've said it for a few times since he's come back. He'd have crawled back to Everton. It's always been part of him. And did you want to get sort of sentimental about it? Everton has been a big part of his life. And he's ultimately found out in one way or the other that's where he'll end up for the majority of his managerial career. He might go on to other things. He probably goes on and manages his country at some point. There'll be things like that happen, but he is Everton through and through. And I don't mean that in a really cheesy way that you'd have a whole lot of Liverpool fans listening to us and they'd probably be taking the piss of what I've just said there. But Pete, then we were just talking there, Pete, before you came in about how Moyes has sort of changed the mentality and how we set up with this club since he came in. And how you can, Adam's excellent point was how you can refer that to what you like in sort of normal life. And it's spot on, isn't it? That you need that encouragement from whatever circle it is inside your life. But footballers is no different other than the fact they need it from a manager. And that's what Moyes has done in and implicated really from the day dot that he come back in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they always say the difference between the top players and the players who don't quite make it is all mentality, isn't it? A lot of it is there's a lot of players out there who've got all the skill in the world, got great skill sets, but they just don't have that mentality to be able to play at the top level. So the psychological side of sport is as important as training your body. You've got to train your brain as well, and certain managers are able to tap into that. When you look at Carlo Ancelotti, for example, I think a big thing about Carlo Ancelotti is the togetherness that he brings with a squad of players, and the fact that all the players respect him so highly, and he's able to get the best out of them. I think David Moyes, when he's come in, and there's probably a lot of players there who are kind of relieved to see the back of Sean Dyche just because of the style of play that he had them playing. I don't think he gave them much confidence in themselves and their own ability to be able to go forward and actually play on the front foot and try and attack teams. So I don't think it's sort of, it would have taken too much to get those players confident again by just getting them to believe in their own ability to be able to play and not just sit back and defend.
Yeah, would you agree with what he said there, Adam? I mean, what Pete's saying is similar to what we were talking about there in what he's done since he came back. I mean, I hate to take it away. Is it taken away from him? I'm trying to find a better way to word this, but it seems a really simple thing that he's coming to do. But like we've spoken about just before Pete came in, it might well be simple, but it's more difficult to implicate, if you get what I mean.
100%. And yeah, again, let's not take away from the fact that we see, 5% of what David Moyes is doing with this crop of players, don't we really? So it's hard for us to say, he's just put an arm around a couple of lads and now they're unbeaten in 7. I think there's going to be slight nuances around tactical changes and the way that we play and the way that we harness the crowd, or the way that we can maybe sit back in certain points and try and move around in terms of a formation and a back 3 and a back 5 like that. That's where he earns his keep as a manager. But as Pete alluded to before, it all boils down to the fact that if you've got a manager who, one, wants to be here, and 2, understand what it takes to be an Everton manager, then you probably won't go too far wrong, will you, really? And I think with Sean Dyche, and you talk about Ancelotti before, I know this may sound like a crazy comparison, but Sean Dyche is probably closer to Ancelotti than he is to David Moyes in terms of the way he comes about. But Sean Dyche isn't Carlo Ancelotti. Carlo Ancelotti can raise an eyebrow and the whole team goes, but we better turn this round here.
Like a headmaster, yeah.
Exactly, whereas he's earned that with numerous trophies and he's managed some of the best and biggest players in the world. I think it got to the point with Sean Dyche that he couldn't take us any further, which he said himself. But in the games leading up to that comment, he probably thought, I don't think these lads are buying into what I'm doing, and therefore we're all going to fail. Whereas I think David Moyes is probably a little less, I wouldn't say arrogant, but a little less inclined to put himself first. He's putting the players first here. He'll be able to go up to James Tarkowski and grit his teeth and say, come on, you need to step up here because you've been poor this season. And James Tarkowski goes, yeah, go on, I'll fight for this fella. He turns around to Beto, puts an arm around Beto and says, listen, I think you've got the ability to go and score 5 and 5 here and become a player for us that's going to be really effective. And he goes, I have actually, yeah. And that's just the ability to manage football as a man manager, essentially. And yeah, we're not discrediting how hard of a job that can be, because all these fellas are driving around in Lamborghinis and Ferraris, aren't they? But at the same time, they're all human when it comes to wanting a little bit of love, a little bit of confidence. And you hear that crowd roar when you score a goal, you'll run through brick walls, won't you?
Yeah, it's the shackles, how long they've had it on them as well. I think you need to keep that in mind, like how stuck they've been with managers that have gone by. You think it's our cost. Those have been there for several years. And that's a bit of a segue with what I want to talk about now, which is the daytime news that's come in. And our man, Paddy Boyland, who wrote this, just in case you were confused, he did write this today about Abdullah Doucoure, who the club have opted not to take the 1-year extension. Now, this surprised me here. His Everton career has been, I'd say, I don't know, largely negative compared to positive, but I don't think it's ever going to be unforgettable, is it? The goal he scored to keep us up against Bournemouth that time. I'll come to you first on this, Pete. Were you surprised that they haven't opted for this? And I know, speaking to Paddy, he was saying that they could still go back in for him. I mean, that's not. They can still go and do that sort of thing. They can still go back at the end of the season and say, well, no, it wasn't just a year we wanted to sign that extension for. It is 2 or whatever, however well he's played. But obviously it gets the impression that it is probably going to be the closed door. First of all, what did you make of that? Was it surprising to you? And then, well, second, David Moyes would have had a say in this. Are you surprised that he'd ultimately say, yeah, thanks, and shake his hand and go?
Well, I think if you looked at Abdullah Doucoure as a squad player, I think he still has his uses. I think he's still got a lot of energy. He's still able to, in those games where you do have to chase down and you do have to have a high press. I think that they're the games where he can do his best work. But I wouldn't be surprised if we did offer him some kind of deal at the end of the season. But at the end of the day, you've got to get value for money. I think by extending the contract, we would have been bound to the terms of his previous contract, which was over 100 grand a week, wasn't it? So I think the sensible option is to let that contract run down, and then at the end of that, to then offer him a new deal if you were going to keep him. I don't think there's any sense in activating that extra year on that kind of wage. Now, if in the meantime someone comes in for him and if he's been linked with the Saudi League in the past, if someone comes in with big money for him, then he's got a decision to make. But I just think if you're going to keep him, it'd make sense to keep him on lower wages, and that was the only way to do it. And also reading Paddy's article, this isn't like a recent. Basically, Everton have let it lapse. It's not that they haven't taken up the option. They've let it lapse on it, and as I say, I don't think that's the end of the story. I think at some point there will be more discussions with Abdullah Doucoure.
Adam?
Yeah, I feel like this is probably less of a David Moyes decision, actually, and more of an economic decision, if I'm honest, because I'm looking here how true this is. He's our top earner by a good amount a week. 130 grand a week he's on. And that's more than Jordan Pickford. I don't know how true these stats are, but he's not going to be far off, is he really? Because he signed on big money at a stage where the club was thinking, yeah, we've got loads to burn here type of thing, making silly decisions on large amounts of money on a long-term deal. So for me, there's probably a little bit of sense that's being spoken here, isn't there really? That 1 year would, of course, be the same wages as Pete's just spoken about there. Yeah. So let's not presume that this is the end of Abdullah Doucoure. I actually think this is a really savvy way of going about it, saying, listen, we want to keep you. We think you're a really good player for us. You're settled here. You've been here a while. I watch a lot of the Everton behind the scenes training stuff. You hear Abdullah Doucoure a lot. He's got a very distinctive voice, and you hear him in the training videos in the UAE. If you watch them, you hear him talking all the time about chances, about shoot, this, that. It was after the game against Liverpool, very vocal. And I think he really, really loves the club. I really do. I think he loves playing here. And I think he loves being based in the city with the likes of Idrissa Gueye, who's very close with Iliman Ndiaye, they're building a good relationship with. So actually, I think Everton are going, go on then, ball's in your court, we'll offer you this. See if you want to take it. We're not making any stupid decisions anymore about getting lads on 160, 170 grand a week who are not necessarily bringing the stats and numbers that we want them to. If you can guarantee that you're going to do that for the next year, then we'll offer you good packages around bonuses and stuff. But we don't believe, or we don't think that our wage structure should be going up and up and up for these players that have been here for this long. Because, as you said, Dave, I think he's been 50-50 as a good and bad player for Everton. Are you paying a 50-50 player that amount of money a week? Don't think you should be, especially when you're looking to become more profitable and definitely stay above the line in terms of finances. So I think it's a really, really good move for Everton. Who's making those decisions? I'm not sure. Is it Kevin Thelwell? Should it be Kevin Thelwell? Is it Mark Watts? Is it the Freaking group as a collective? So yeah, I think it's something that I'd like to see more of. But I'd also like to see Abdullah Doucoure stay at Everton because I do think he can affect the way we play. And the likes of Charlie Alcaraz, there's no guarantees he's going to be here by the end of the season. And we've got a lot of footballers at the club at the moment who are running very thin on their contracts. And if we can get Abdullah Doucoure to sign on a lower deal, a better deal, and I don't think he should be one of those that leaves at the end of the season.
I think that's a really interesting point there. And, you know, when you said there 50-50, you were saying this, I'm thinking, which side do they still fall on, you know, when you said it's 50-50, because it really is that, you know, because he's one of those players that can frustrate the hell out of you so many times, Pete. And I watch him sometimes, I think, do you know what, he's essential. And I'm not just referring to the goal he scored against Bournemouth, but look how he performed against Man United. He's got some outstanding attributes that are better than many other players he comes up against. Yet there's so many times I watch him and think, like, he doesn't even look like a professional footballer. I think he probably epitomises many players that Everton have had in the past, to be honest with you, who've got obvious talent. And I'll probably go back to the initial Moyes years when I think Adam referred to it, when you're just spending money for the laugh and we're going in and getting all these players from all over the place. It's hard to put him in that category because he's done better and he's been, I don't know, I think he's done well enough to get what he has right now and stay at Everton. The financial side, absolutely not there. Like Adam said, what he's rumoured to be on with that money, that's absolutely ridiculous. I don't care if you've had billionaires, multi-billionaires, which we've had, coming and own the football club. The factor and the most important thing with this football club right now is to have them finances in the line of, we are willing to pay this and we're not willing to pay that, regardless of how much money you've got. It's not like a City, even though I've mentioned these on every podcast, so people are going to start kicking off on me, but you look at Liverpool over the road there, they won't pay beyond a certain amount, regardless of who the player is and regardless of how much money that their owners have got, when they could do that. Man City do that and look like they might well be in a load of trouble. Look and behold at what might happen with them. So I'm with Adam. I think I want him to stay because of, well, a couple of reasons that I'll probably say that a little bit different is, what alternative, you're looking at Everton, what money would you have to go and spend to get a player of his quality into the side? Now, that's going to be a hell of a lot more money than we initially paid for him, just the way football finance is these days. You're going to have to pay more to get somebody of his quality to play. Yes, you might get a player that's that does it a lot more often. He's more consistent than Doucoure, but you are going to pay more. I think we can agree to that. And the other one is importance in this side, because even if it doesn't look like he's playing well, he adds a balance to this. He can play. I mean, what I first thought, I don't know if it was Dyche or it might have been Moyes against Villa, where he decides to drop him back and play him alongside of Doucoure or in and around that defensive midfield area. And I was like, what are you doing? Because it just isn't him. He's not comfortable enough to do so. I don't think he has the patience to do so, and he's simply not good enough to do so. But you put him in there as a 10, you put him in there in this quite versatile role that he's got in front of our midfield, and that's where he seems to flourish. That's all he seems to be able to do. And that's not to do him a disservice, because that's an essential role that the Premier League clubs want, is a 10. We've spoken about him a lot in terms of, can he play there? Shall we move him from where he is? And what you're gaining in one aspect, you're losing in the other. And I think that's the quality he's got for us. But with Doucoure, he seems to have that one specific position there that I think Everton are going to have to go and pay out a hell of a lot more money to get him. Now, he's only 32. I've just checked them while you guys were talking. He's only 32. I thought he was a lot older than that. So he's still got his better days, or his equal amount of days in front of him. So would you, I say get him back, but would you go in with a different kind of contract to them and say, look, this is where we are. You're 32 years old. There's no way you're getting that much money from us. And given what Adam said there about how much he seems to love this football club as well, you hear the way he talks, you look what he did at Liverpool. He generally seems like an Everton fan. I know that might be a little bit too cheesy to say, but he looks like he really cares about this football club. That goes a long way. Before you came on, people were talking about this, about how you get the best out of players, is by getting fans on their side, as well as the manager, as well as everything else that comes with it, the way in which they play. But he's that kind of player who can really get behind them, given the he'll fight for everything. He'll look absolutely woeful, like I've said at times, but he'll have all of us screaming for him to do better. He's just that kind of player for me. And he's the kind that when Goodison get behind him, he's like a train the way he moves around, and he can properly get involved in every positive thing we need, really. So would you go at the end of the season and say, there's 2 years, half price? What are you saying?
I think it's a sensible thing to do. As I say, it just depends on whether, in the meantime, he gets any offers and any bigger offers in terms of wages. But then he's got a decision to make. But I mean, there's one thing to bear in mind with Doucoure as well. I saw an amazing stat that since he signed for us, we've only actually won 4 games when he hasn't been in the side. So I mean, in terms of his importance,
is that a coincidence? Is that a coincidence, or is that like you think it's why? Or would you go like a little bit in the middle of that?
It's a very big coincidence, isn't it? I mean, if you look at the impact, I mean, you'd probably say the manager who didn't favour him the most was Frank Lampard. And as soon as Lampard kind of completely ousted him from the side, I think he had him training with the under-23s at one point, didn't he? He was totally ostracised, and he came back in, and he was vital in us staying up that season. So I think he does lack in quality in terms of when he's in possession of the football. I think he's not the most sort of versatile of players, but sometimes you do need players who just have that energy about them, and that willingness to drive, and that willingness to carry on fighting and battling for you. And I think when you compare him to other players who we've signed during that kind of time period, ones who came in on big money and didn't really do much, didn't really look interested. Morgan Schneiderlin, a prime example of a player who came in on massive money. We overpaid him to get him to the football club, and he was a complete waste of time. I think Abdullah Doucoure, if every player we signed had his attitude, I think we'd be in a far better position than we are. And I think that's the kind of player that David Moyes will be looking to sign anyway. He'll be looking to sign players who are hungry, who are going to come into Everton Football Club, see it as an honour to play for Everton Football Club, and players who are hungry and wanting to prove themselves here as well. But as I say, I think that there's more to it. I don't think the story with Abdullah Doucoure is quite over just yet.
I'd like to see him with a year of David Moyes, to be fair. I think we can talk about wages and contracts and what he's done for Everton and what maybe he lacks in terms of ability. But I'd actually like to see David Moyes get a hold of him and say, I think you can do this, or I think you need to concentrate on this. Because if you look at the games that he's played since Moyes has come in, you could put him up there for being the most consistent, really, couldn't you? In terms of affecting games. I think that Liverpool game, like, as much as when he gets the ball, he's not great, which is kind of the idea a lot of the time. He is, as we've spoken about, he's absolutely integral, I think, in playing against teams where you haven't got as much of the ball. I think he makes Everton so much more hard to beat, and also just gives everyone else a little bit of a breather, because the engine on him is frightening, isn't it, really? But what I'd like to see is David Moyes say to him that you need to improve on this, you need to improve on that. And from the evidence we've had so far, he seems to be maybe tweaking a couple of things, because he's been affecting the game a lot more in possession, as well as keeping up those energy levels out of possession. So you look at Liverpool, you look at Manchester United, you look at these games that we've played in, I think he's been up there for man of the match, really, hasn't he? So I think there's a nice situation for Everton here. Maybe not so nice for Abdullah Doucoure, because he might be having to take a wage cut. But can you name a team in this league that's probably going to take him on anything more than 100 odd grand? And if Everton are offering him 70, 80 grand a week for a couple of years, I think he's probably taking that.
Even that though as well is a lot of money. That is a lot, isn't it? If you're talking about even half them would be on 75k, 70k, in and around that amount. I mean that's a big chunk of your salary caps, if you like, what you want, whatever want to go out and pay for them. But it'll be interesting there, because then like you sort of put your money where his mouth is, not to go on with the sort of that cliche, but that's what you'd be saying to him, really. If you love Everton that much, you think you're not going to go on to play anywhere better. You think nobody's going to pay you any more than this, which I'd imagine wouldn't be the case. Because I mean, like you said there, I couldn't imagine another side, and this is no disrespect to him, who would come up and say, yeah, we'll have you. I couldn't imagine anybody as big as Everton. And I don't mean that out of Everton, the most massive club in the world. I mean that in terms of the size of Everton are right now in Premier League terms. I couldn't see anybody else really. You're going to say something else, Adam?
Yeah, I was going to say that you probably couldn't in England, could you? And that's where the Saudi conversation always comes in, doesn't it, really? And he probably would get that money over there. But does Abdullah Doucoure come across as a player who's happy to say, yeah, I'm done here, in terms of challenging himself every week? 52,000 fans or whatever it's going to be next season. Like, I get the pull of the Saudi League, and yeah, I'd go play there for a couple of years just to sort my family's family for the rest of their family's life. But
yeah,
I also think that he's, as you said before, Dave, he's 32. He's not exactly 37, 38, struggling to run around, struggling to get about the pitch. He's still very much an athlete at the top of his physical game. So, yeah, it's obviously something that Everton are feeling the right decision. And actually, if you think about the Saudi League and these other leagues that are maybe not as good quality-wise, but probably paying the wages, then Abdullah Doucoure's got quite a nice decision to make as well. Why doesn't he do Everton for another couple of seasons and then go, do you know what? If I am still feeling like I'm ready, then I'll stay. But if I'm not, yeah, then maybe I can go and live over in Saudi Arabia and yeah, see me days out there.
Yeah, it's a nice decision. We all want something like that to say. Moving on to something that might relate to this is if he does go, and I think a couple of people, certainly myself, been talking about this with Alcaraz since he came in, playing in a position that could potentially be in and around what Doucoure does, albeit very physically different attributes about them. But he's been really impressive since he's came in here, Pete. And he's come out with a comment, hasn't he, last couple of days. He said he wants to stay. It'd be great to stay here because of the club, the institution, the fans, they're great. It's very crazy, but that's why I'm calm and will keep doing my work I've been doing and show what type of player I am. And he also had some really positive things to say about working with David Moyes. He seems to have taken like a duck to water from what I've seen. I think he's been utilised well by Moyes. It hasn't been an automatic start straight away. He's decided to try and sort of, throw him in a little bit here and there. And I think did he start against Brentford? Did he start against Brentford? He has made the start, hasn't he, so far? He's definitely started.
He started against Palace, didn't he?
Yeah. Look, lo and behold, he went and got the winner for it. Yeah, he seems like a box of tricks to me. He seems, I don't know, it's South American style here, but, you look what happens at the end of the derby. I mean, he was one of the first over there just looking for the scrap, wasn't he? And I do love this kind of play. Obviously, if you take it within reason of it's an attribute rather than, he's just going to 2-foot people and get sent off. And he's got a 3-game ban every single time he makes it back to play for Everton. But what you've seen so far, talented lad, what is it, around 16 million is going to be the fee if you want to keep him beyond this loan period. Probably too early a decision to make because he's played 7-8 games since he came in. But what have you made of him so far?
I personally, I think it's a no-brainer. I think we will sign him. I think that's probably a deal that's already sorted. I think I said on a pod the other day that deal came across to me as very much a PSR fiddle that we wanted to guarantee the signing, but without having to pay the money out straight away. One of those we'll pay you in the summer on Klarna type deals. But I've been really impressed with him. It's a shame that him. Yeah, it's a shame that him coming into the side has coincided with Iliman and Dye getting injured as well, because I think that those two in particular will work really well together, and I think that's when we'll see probably the best out of him as well. Because and another player as well. I think I mentioned this the other day as well, Dwight McNeil. I think Dwight McNeil did a lot of his best work earlier on in the season, although he was kind of. A lot of people didn't rate him in that number 10 role. I personally did, and I think a lot of his best work came when he was working in close proximity to Iliman and Dye. And I think that if Charlie Alcaraz can add to that little triangle, if you like, and the three of them can work together, I think that's a system that could work really well in the final third. But yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. I think we will sign him, and I think he's going to be a really important player for Everton going forward. It's certainly nice to have a bit of South American flair back in the side after Richarlison's, left, and maybe he's our replacement for him.
So you're going to say Funes Mori then?
Do you know what I will say, Dave, is
Yeah.
I think it's frightening how similar him and Richarlison move. I've watched. It's funny. I watched him for Southampton, and me and a few of my mates were like, the way that he almost like floats around a little bit and like bounces off people and gets the ball. It's almost like he's inches away from injury all the time. The way his like limbs bend all over the place. Richarlison used to do it. I remember a goal away at Wolves. I think it was his first game where like he's almost buckled his ankle underneath itself but they're so slight and they're so, as you say, flary that they're able to manipulate the bodies in ways that, I'd be in a wheelchair for a couple of months if I tried to do anything like that. So it is nice to have someone like that who's a little bit different, a little bit flary and also fiery, which is definitely something he is. He's booting the ball away at Brentford, wasn't it, when someone didn't square it to him and stuff. And I love that, mate. I genuinely, if you've got players who want to score and aren't happy when it doesn't go their way, as long as you can channel that, they're players that are going to be massive in terms of mentality and winning games. And dare I say it, he feels a little bit like a David Moyes player, doesn't he, really? If David Moyes can work him well in terms of how he's treating him and how he's getting him into the side, getting him out the side, keeping the fire in the belly, and then saying to him, go on then, if you think you're good enough, go and show us. I think he could be really, really good for us. And maybe wrong here, and it's quite a bold statement actually, but I think someone like Dwight McNeil, I think these types of players, Njai and Alcaraz, maybe Linson to a certain extent, I think this could spell the end of someone like Dwight McNeil actually, in terms of the way he plays. I think he's a great technician. I don't think he's going to suit an Everton side that has players like this moving forward, because I don't feel like he's physical enough for where I feel like David Moyes could take us. I hope I'm wrong, because I think he's someone who could be really beneficial to a side like Everton in terms of dead balls, set pieces, shooting from range. But I think we may need to find a different type of role for him, because Everton on the break at the moment is really dangerous. Everton on the break with Dwight McNeil weren't dangerous.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting you mentioned there is, like, it makes it relatively exciting when you think about, you've got four really good attacking players there who you can have compete against each other. What happens with Alcaraz if we keep him or not, and then you throw Doucoure into the mix there. You've got five players there that you can put behind, let's say, Beto. I'm pretty sure that we'll go looking for another striker anyway. I personally don't think Calvert-Lewin's going to be staying either. When you get an Everton side that feel that way, it does, dare to say it, Pete, does it excite you what Everton have got here? Because, again, Adam said some things in this pod so far, which is just sort of like make me take a different perspective on that. But if you look at that, and if you've got a striker that is good enough, which we've seen Beto show in the last half dozen games there, that Moyes has got him kicking on, and we've actually looked at him and thought, you know what, his attribute isn't just simply playing a 40, 50-yard ball up to his head. Because I've always said I don't think he's any good in the air, but he is much better in his. Again, people might well get on me to this, but technically he's a lot better than what we thought. I think if he uses attributes, I think if you're playing against a team that has a high defensive line, he's quick. He's quick, and to reiterate something else I've said is, like, we've got big lads who are quick, and it's not often you get both. You get big lads who are great in the air but not quick, or you get quick lads who aren't good in the air. He's better. He's better. He's fine at pace. We've got that in, like, just to put another couple of players. Brandtwaite's the same. O'Brien looks the same as well. Really quick lads who are bossing, tall enough in the air to be assets there. But I want to just one player you put into that there, Adam, as well. I mean, Lindstrom too. He's somebody, Pete, who's coming to his own last few games. Somebody who seems to finally get what Everton is. Because when I seen him come in, someone told me he's like an empty packet of crisps getting flown around, because he's obviously, it's not the biggest of lads, is he? He doesn't look like he's hitting the gym every day to do the weights and all that sort of thing. And there's obviously a reason why a player goes on loan. I go back to what Matt Jones has always said to me. There's a reason why players end up at Everton, given the situation we've been in for quite some time. and he looks like he fits that category because he come over from Napoli and doesn't look like he's got a home. And I compare that to Alcaraz, really. Players come to certain clubs and they don't have a home that they've come from. They've always been in and about. You look at Alcaraz there, Southampton didn't stay, Juventus didn't work out for him. It's sometimes you just need a glove-fitting club to come along, and Everton are very much that type of club for many players, maybe even too much so, which is why we end up with so many. But with Lindstrom there, you put him on the tick the box, go and sign him permanently. I still think, to me, we mentioned that 4. I'd probably disagree with Adam there. I put him, if this is what he meant, I'd put him behind the list of that's got McNeil in there. But I completely get the point that it might be not his time is going to continue with Everton because of what Moyes has got everybody else working like you said, that hopefully wrong, because we haven't seen him under Moyes yet, and I'm not sure when he's due back, but he's got to go some. And this is a great thing to, as an underlying thing that we've got that's really positive, is these lads are now fighting for places on this side, and how often have we been able to say that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, before I move on to Lindstrom, I think Dwight McNeil, one of the things he does offer as well is versatility. And I think the way that David Moyes likes to play as well, as we've always known, probably a way that Sean Dyche didn't necessarily, is that he likes to take full advantage of the overlapping fullbacks, and he wants to get balls into the box. He wants runners from midfield. He wants to pack the box. I think Dwight McNeil can do a lot of damage from out wide when he's on the left hand side. I think he can whip a ball in better than anyone on our side. He's also got the threat of scoring a goal from outside the box as well, which is very handy if you're pinging balls into the box all day, and you need someone to be on the end of any clearances from the defenders. So I think Dwight McNeil is still a very important part of our squad. What I'd say is look at Kevin Kilban. I think everyone wrote off Kevin Kilban before we signed him, and David Moyes had him playing great. So, but yeah, in terms of Lindstrom, not entirely convinced at the moment. I think we've seen a marked improvement since Moyes has come in. I think Moyes had said when he came in, he was a player that he'd previously scouted and previously looked at, and he was impressed by. I think he has improved under Moyes, but I don't think he's quite there yet for us to be splashing out all kinds of money on him. Preferably, I'd be looking for another loan option, depending on his contract situation at Napoli. I think that would be the sensible thing to do to get him in for a full season under David Moyes, and kind of assess whether we want to spend big money on him. Possibly pay a loan fee or something just to sweeten the deal a bit, but I'm just not convinced on paying big money for him at the moment, just because of when you look at his output in terms of goals and assists, he's got nothing so far, has he? But you can see the improvements he's getting there, basically.
Yeah, be interesting if you can scrap Jack Harrison's deal, whatever he's got, and just give it to Lindstrom, maybe keep him for a couple of more seasons. But yeah, less said about Harrison the better here, because we've had quite a positive conversation. What were you going to say then, Adam?
I was going to say I agree with Pete in terms of Lindstrom. What I think is massive for Everton moving forward is, you look at the likes of Jesper Lindstrom, you look at the likes of Vitaly Mykolenko, and they are players who David Moyes would have previously worked with in terms of ability and made them better. But I also think we just need to keep looking at a position and saying, where's the quality there? Vitaly Mykolenko, for me, is maybe harsh here, is a 5 out of 10. Can we go and get a 7? Jesper Lindstrom, since David Moyes has come in, has been a 6 out of 10. Can we go and get an 8? And I think that's where you build a squad, because you drop down from a new left back who's that 7 or 8 out of 10 to a Vitaly Mykolenko who feels a little bit more comfortable, less pressure. He's had a good run of games. That's where you start to build a team that can go and play in cup competitions, that can go and challenge for 6th, 7th, 8th in the league. Because at the moment, we've got a good 8. You need a good 15. And I don't mean a world beater 15 who are fighting each other because they're not starting games. I think Jesper Lindstrom and Vitaly Mykolenko are really good squad players for Everton, and can be an asset when it comes to your 3rd, 4th rounds of the FA Cup, or games midweek where you need someone to come in and fill in because there's a bit of fatigue in the squad. But I want Everton to go and find someone who's a diamond in the rough, or go and find the next best thing, or go and find someone who comes in and totally transforms our fortunes, really. And I don't think that, for example, those 2 players are, but that's not to say that they shouldn't earn their keep and if they can earn the keep, then they'll earn themselves a contract. But I just think there's players out there that we can go and get really clever with in terms of money, in terms of transfers, in terms of having two players. But there's nothing better than Alcaraz and Doucoure, in for a game, out for a game. Who's going to be the one? Who's going to be the one that wants to step up? If you go and score a couple, I can't drop you. If you go and set up two and score one, I can't drop you. That's what we need now. That's what we need to go to the next level. We need a squad of 16, 18 players who are constantly looking behind themselves going, he's on me here. And I think we can do that with a little bit of a free up in terms of finances and a little bit of a breather now that we're not staring down the barrel of relegation.
Yeah, it's interesting how quickly things can change, isn't it, with players, because there's so many look at thinking, do you know what, he's coming towards the end of his contract, you've got to start again, clean slate, term that used far too often. I think when you've got a new manager in and you're going towards the summer, when you've got quite a bit of money to spend, whatever it can spend remains to be seen. But let's face it, they're in a much more, I don't know, decent way in terms of finances. I dare tip my toe in the water to say that. Really, you never know what's going to happen to you, PSR and all sorts of nonsense like that in and around football. But yeah, I mean, it's encouraging, isn't it, that we've got a squad there that is probably at the nucleus of what Everton can go and do, and we've seen that from the way in which we play. I wanted to finish now, lads, because we've got Wolves away. We're back in Premier League action there. Indicated we were talking at the start, Pete, before you came, about what a ridiculous time for a start of a match away, in the Midlands at 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday. That something needs to be done about all this, and hopefully will be. With fans getting together and saying this is just completely out of order. I think Newcastle had it playing Liverpool, coming down on a Wednesday, which is like a ridiculous round trip as well. If anybody's been there, or indeed the other way, coming down and going back. So Wolves, anyway, though, we are 15 points clear, I'm right in saying, of the relegation zone. And I wanted to finish by asking you both, what is the goal now with the 11 we've got left? 11 games left, in our wildest dreams, you're talking about European places and all that. But what do you think Moyes is looking at here, thinking, and it probably fits in line with what we've spoken about with the players here, Pete, of how you get to a point where you're looking at going into the summer in a level of positivity. And that, to me, was a really important problem that we seem to have under Moyes, when you just tail off at the end of seasons, when you had a Europa position, or when you're fifth, sixth, whenever it gets you into a European competition. That was when it seemed like the old-fashioned statement, isn't it, that everybody's on the beach, everybody's got their feet up, that those sorts of things that are always being put in when clubs don't do so well towards the end of a campaign. I still think this is quite vital, isn't it? These 11 games, if you consider Everton a safe, which I was happy to raise the flag and say they were, because I was one of the late ones to say, "No, we're not safe yet. We're not safe yet. We are safe now." What you put is don't do that with your eyes. What are you going to put with what Moyes will obviously want to go and do, but what you think is important for Everton to stay on track with here? Because if he kept, he would be starting to look at something like outrageous, like a European position, if we kept in this run of form that we're on. You would imagine that it's not going to happen, or you would suggest that it's not going to happen. That there will be peaks and troughs before that. Got some really difficult games, haven't we? Got Arsenal, City, still got to go to Liverpool away. Those games as well. But nonetheless, these are an important run of games here, aren't they? Regardless of where Everton are going to finish, say, I don't know, mid-table or lower, second out, bottom half of the table, higher up, 12th, 11th, 13th, something like that. But he's still got to keep momentum going into the summer, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is that every place in the Premier League is worth millions. I think Everton, in the position we find ourselves in,
3 million a spot.
Yes, it's between 1.5 and 3 million, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah.
But which is, so. But I don't think we're in a position where we can rest on our laurels. I think we have to fight for every point in every game. I think as well, David Moyes his priority will be to assess the squad that he's got now, and to properly assess going into the summer which areas we need to improve on. Because I think next season, it will be a case of looking up, not down. I think he's going to want to really kick on, especially moving into that new stadium. David Moyes won't be thinking, I just want to survive next season. He's going to be thinking, I want to have a good run in the league and have a good go at trying to get him into one of those European places. So yeah, it's a huge few months for Everton Football Club, because again, decisions are going to be made on players' contracts. Decisions are going to be made on the type of investment we're going to have in the summer. It's vital that we get these decisions right, because when you look at what happened in the first summer where we were able to really spend on the Moshiri, we made so many mistakes and we had to live with them for 5-6 years because of the contract length. So I think it's a crucial time in Everton's future right now, and I think it's something that I don't think David Moyes will take lightly, and I think all the players need to understand that as well. They're fighting for their own future at Everton Football Club. They're fighting, whether they're fighting for a new contract or they just want to stay at the football club. I don't think anyone's safe in that squad at the moment, other than maybe the likes of Jordan Pickford as an exception. But I think everyone there has got to prove themselves from now to the end of the season and show that they're capable of playing in a David Moyes Everton side.
Yeah, as Pete just spoke about then, going in as a new player by pure and simply finishing higher in the league. If we can finish above West Ham, United, Tottenham and maybe Palace, what's that? 15, 20 mil?
Yeah.
It's a brand new winger. It's a brand new left back. It's Charlie Alcaraz for free. These are the things that might sound jovial, but finishing above Manchester United and Tottenham and West Ham, which is going to be a massive one for David Moyes, by the way. I think as much as he might deny it, he would love to finish above them. And then you've got your Brentfords, you've got your Crystal Palaces. Like, I think a lot of, and me especially, I look at Brentford now and go, be good to get up near. They should be nowhere near us. Nowhere near us. I look at Fulham, nowhere near us. Go and finish above them. Next season, go and finish above them. And then you say, right, we're back to where we belong here. Now we can go and challenge the teams that we think we may be able to get up to, but necessarily aren't feeling like we should. As an Everton fan for the past 6-7 years, finishing below some of these sides is embarrassing. So we need to stop doing it. Go and finish above them. Go and get your 40 points. Go and get your 50 points. And then go and see if you can pick off your Chelseas, your Newcastles, your Bournemouths maybe, who granted may be in that pool, but they're well ahead of us now in terms of how they're... If we finished above Bournemouth next season, everyone will go, had a good season, haven't they?
Yeah.
This is what we need to be doing. We need to be going and picking off these teams that have been leaving us behind for years. And I tell you now, it won't need much, because a lot of these teams are, built on good foundations, but Everton are miles bigger than them, miles bigger. If you turn around to any player in the next couple of years and Everton have finished 10th and Bournemouth have finished 9th, they're going to Everton, full stop. And that's where we need to get back to now. We need to become an attractive club to young, hungry, up-and-coming, these syllables we've used for years gone by, where players turn around and say, I'm not in a relegation battle here. I'm in a 53,000-seater stadium and we're looking to get into Europe. That's where we need to start going. And it starts with Pip and some of these teams that are floundering near the bottom of the league.
I think that's an excellent way to end this, to be honest with you, mate, because it's the level of positivity we want. And like you said, like I asked the question there, what you do for these 11 games, they are vitally important there. Not in terms of the financial one there. And like you said, it just gone by the wayside there. If you get 20 million more than where your current position is, then you can go and get an Alcaraz, which is basically a free with that sort of money. So it is important for Everton to crack on to the end of the season and give everything he can. Add that as well to Goodison having its final few games we're approaching as well. Anyway, that's all we've got time for with the weekly, which is on again Thursday night. Not normally, it's on a Wednesday, but given that Everton kick off at silly o'clock at Wolves this weekend, then we decided to do it on a Thursday. Thanks to all of you for listening. We've still got the mailbag to go before the Wolves game. Obviously, we'll have post-match after that, which is going to be late on a Saturday night for the reason that I've just said then. And then we'll be back in the coming week with all the usual shows, starting on Monday with Blue Monday with me, Roger and Les. And then Warren's back for weekly next Wednesday as well. So, yeah, the Blue Room trucks keeps on going like the Blues do under David Moyes. Thanks for listening and up the toffees.